the commencement of the workshop a bit behind schedule. So due to some technical hitches. Good evening, Your Excellency. Good evening, the trainees of the Billion Dollars Initiative. This workshop on peace and ethics. Today, I'll be focusing on peace. Basically, without wasting your time, in this presentation, we'll be giving you a brief introduction of the peace ethics itself. We'll look at the objectives of the training, the duration of the training, and we'll give you a brief history of a Billion Dollars Initiative, a brief history of the United Nations, a brief history of the United Nations Development Fund, United Nations Development Program. Then we'll give you a brief of the Millennial Development Goals, which transformed after its demise, now lead up to the Sustainable Development Goals. Then we'll look at what is peace, related meanings of peace, types of peace, some peace codes. Then we'll look at why is peace important in our society. We'll look at what is conflict, causes of conflict. We'll look at examples of conflict situations across the world. Then we'll look at how to resolve conflicts, that is conflict resolution. We'll then look at conflict resolution steps. We'll also look at negotiation, types of negotiation, goals of negotiation, stages of negotiation, how to carry out peace and ethics advocacy. That's after this training, what you're expected to do in order to, as you carry on with your advocacy in terms of peace. Then from there, you ask your questions or make your comments. Then we'll conclude. Thank you. Basically, the peace and ethics advocacy training program is a training program created by our noble NGO.
Can you please speak louder? I can't quite hear you.
The Peace and Ethics training program is created by our noble NGO, the $1 Billion Initiative, as part of its effort to promote global peace in the African continent. Then, to ensure justice and stronger institutions in Africa and beyond. It is targeted at training African youth who are by far the most active demographic of the population to serve as peace and ethics advocates across the African continent. The peace, justice, and strong institutions is the sustained goal of the Sustainable Development Goals. So basically, the UN, under the auspices of the United Nations Development Program, which promotes the development goals across continents and territories and states and non-state actors like NGOs, CSOs, etc. around the world for the benefit of humanity. Then, Goal 16 of the SDGs mainly aimed at promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions in all levels of the society. Then, objectives of this program. 1, at the end of this training program, you should be able to define conflict, peace, and peace building. At the end of this program, you are expected to know peace building mechanisms and methods suitable for different situations, individuals, or groups. You should also know the meaning of peace, types of peace, and the importance of peace in our society, either small or large society. You should know the meaning of conflict, types of conflicts, consequences of conflict, how to resolve conflicts, and conflict resolution steps. You are also expected at the end of this training, you should be able to continue to broker peace whenever and wherever there are signs or real conflict situations around you. You also know the meaning of negotiation, types of negotiation, the goals of negotiation, and the stages involved in negotiation process. You are also expected to know how to carry out your duties as a peace and ethics advocate in your community or larger society. At the end of this training, you, by the grace of God, the A Billion Dollars Initiative will give you a certificate, a UNDP/SDG approved certificate will be given to you so that to enable you to carry on with your advocacy. Also, then we are going the duration of this, everything being equal, we expect the duration of this meeting. We expect the duration of this meeting to last for 2 hours. But however, I'll try as much as possible not to allow it to last up to 2 hours. By the grace of God, we'll do justice to it. It will not get to 2 hours. By the grace of God, I will make sure I summarize, I kind of give synopsis of the major points in the presentation. A brief about the A Billion Dollars Initiative. A Billion Dollars Initiative is a non-governmental organization that is also non-political, non-religious, and non-ethnic in all its forms and operations, with the cardinal aim of creating the desired change across the African continent through harnessing and utilizing the strengths and talents of the African youth for the advancement of the African peoples in particular and the humanity in general. The mission of Abdi. The Abdi mission is to provide all humanity with access to appropriate equal opportunities in health, education, and employment or trade. Our vision at Abdi. At Abdi, our vision is to become the first generation to end extreme poverty and the most determined generation in history to end tribalism and corruption, and the last generation to be threatened by poor education, insufficient health, unequal opportunities, and poor standard of living. The core values of Abdi. At Abdi, underpinning everything we do are 6 core values. 1, integrity. 2, advocating on behalf of the poor and the vulnerable members of the society. 3, independence from cultural or religious affiliations. 4, professionalism. 5, respect for diversities across continents and across races. 6, act without consideration for personal gains. So basically, most of our things we do in Abdi is for the benefit of humanity and will not target the gains that will do financial gains. Basically, it is mainly to provide our own quota towards the development of humanity and our own, as part of our contribution to development of humanity in general. A Billion Dollars Initiative has some projects is engaging in the SDGs. We know that the SDGs are 17 in number. However, A Billion Dollars Initiative streamlines some of the activities we are involved in. One of it is goal 1 of the SDG, which is no to poverty. Then we have goal 1.1, goal 1 target 1, which is eradicate extreme poverty. Then we have the goal 3, which 3.5, which is prevent and treat substance abuse.
Can you share your screen, please, so that they can see what you're talking about? Because it's really difficult catching up to what you're saying without visualizing it.
Okay, Your Excellency. Okay. Excuse me. Right. Okay, documents. No. Okay. Excuse me, just a minute. What's happening now? Android, okay. India. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Your Excellency, is it visible now? Your Excellency.
We can see your screen.
Okay, good. We are somewhere around we are here. Yes, this is where we are. This is where we are. Okay, we are here, Your Excellency. I was talking about the SDGs project that $1 billion initiative is involving. We have the goal 1, which is no poverty, goal 1.1, which eradicate extreme poverty, goal 3.5, prevent and treat substance abuse, like drug abuse and other related substances, goal 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, which is what we are doing today. That is training advocates on how to carry out advocacy on peace, justice, and strong institutions, which is goal 16 of the SDG. Then we have goal 16 target 2, which is protect children from abuse. We have then exploitation, trafficking, and violence. This is part of what we do at the SDG. I believe by next week will be the group will be presenting a paper on that. We'll be training the advocates on that. Then we'll have goal 16.5 and target 5, which is substantially reduce corruption and bribery. Then we'll have goal 16.8 and target 8, which is strengthen participation of global governance. Then a brief about the United Nations. The United Nations, UN, is an international organization founded in 1945 after the end of the Second World War. It is currently made up of 193 member states. The mission and work of the United Nations are guided by the purposes and principles contained in its founding charter. I'll jump the member states. Basically, it's 193 members. Then the main organs, we have the organs of the United Nations General. Okay. The main organs of the UN, that is United Nations, are 1, the General Assembly, 2, the Security Council, 3, the Economic and Security Council, 3, the Trustees Council, 4, the International Court of Justice, and the last but not the least, the UN Secretariat. All were established the same time in 1945 when the UN was founded. Then a brief about the Undp, which is mainly the organ of the Undp, organ or agency of the Undp that carry out and supervises and directs countries on the strategies to be adopted in development programs of the United Nations. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, is an organ or agency of the United Nations that is primarily saddled with the development agenda and implementation strategies aimed at attaining inclusive, sustainable development in countries and territories across the globe. UNDP works in about 170 countries and territories, helping to achieve the eradication of poverty and the reduction of inequalities and exclusion. It helps countries to develop policies, leadership skills, partnering abilities, institutional capabilities, and build resilience in order to sustain development results. In the year 2015, precisely in September, world leaders adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. Please, somebody is interrupting the. Please, somebody should. Please, somebody should. Please, somebody's mic is on. He should mute his mic, please. Yeah, Your Excellency, somebody's mic is on and is interrupting. Basically, the UNDP is working to strengthen new frameworks for development, disaster risk reduction, and climate change. It supports countries' efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals or global goals, which will guide global development priorities through 2030. The Millennial Development Goals. Basically, the Millennial Development Goals are 8 in number. The United Nations Millennial Development Goals, MDGs, are 8 goals that UN member states agreed to try to achieve by the year 2015. The 8 goals are: 1, to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger by 2015. 2, to achieve universal primary education. 3, promote gender equality and empower women. 4, reduce child mortality. 5, improve mental health. 6, combat HIV and AIDS, malaria and other diseases. 7, ensure environmental sustainability. And 8, development a global partnership for development. So now we'll look at the MDGs. The MDGs are basically 17 in number. Globally, the number of deaths, some of the achievements of the MDGs, globally, the number of deaths of children under the 5 years of age fell from 12.7 million in 1990 to 6.3 million in 2013. Another achievement of the MDGs is that in developing countries such as Nigeria and other African countries and the South American countries, the percentage of underweight children under 5 years dropped from 28% in 1990 to 17% in 2013. Globally, new HIV infections declined by 38% between 2001 and 2013. Existing cases of tuberculosis are declining, along with the death among HIV negative and tuberculosis cases. In 2010, the world met the United Nations Millennial Development Goals target on access to safe drinking water as measured by the proxy indicator of access to improved drinking water sources. But more needs to be done to achieve the sanitation target. The Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, have been superseded by the emergence of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, in 2015. So the demise of the MDGs, which is the Millennium Development Goals, and because some of the countries in developing countries, especially in Africa and South America, we are not able to meet the targets of the MDGs, led to the emergence and the framework, creating the framework for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So basically, the SDGs were adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015 by the United Nations General Assembly as a universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity by the year 2030. The 17 SDG goals are integrated, meaning action in one area will obviously affect all other SDGs. Now, the 17 SDGs in brief. Number 1 is no to poverty, end poverty in all its forms, everywhere. Number 2 is zero hunger, end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture across countries. 3, good health and well-being, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Quality education, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all people across the world. 5, gender equality. Achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls across the world. 6, clean water and sanitation. Ensure availability and sustainability of management of water and sanitation for all. 7, affordable and clean energy. Ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all across the world. Then decent work and economic growth. Promote sustainable, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all across the world. 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. 10, reduce inequalities. 11, sustainable cities and communities. 12, responsible consumption and production. 13, climate action. Take urgent action to combat climate change and its impact across the world. 14, life below water. Conserve and sustain use the oceans, the oceans, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development across the world. 15, life on land. 16, which is our own target, which we are dealing with, peace, justice, and strong institutions. This is aimed at promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels in all countries across the world. Then 17, partnership for the goals. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. What this means in essence is that the 17th goal of the SDG is that institutions across the world, especially state actors, that is countries, they form this strong and enduring synergy that enables them to do a kind of peer review from time to time in order to ensure that all other 16 goals are achieved, possibly at the same level or with little or no distance between countries that are targeting, that is the 170 countries that the Undp is working in to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by the year 2030. Then, what is peace? Peace is a concept of societal friendship and harmony in the absence of hostility and of conflicts such as wars and violent protests, and freedom from fear of violence between individuals or groups. Peace is regarded as the absence of war, fear, conflicts, anxiety, suffering, and violence, and about peaceful coexistence. This is according to Francis in 2006, Ubuzo 2011. Peace is a state of harmony characterized by the lack of violence, conflict behavior, and the freedom from fear of violence. So what this entails in summary is that peace itself entails the atmosphere that is peaceful. In essence, there's no any form of conflict, particularly violent conflict. There's no war. There's no fear. For instance, if you're in a society where you are afraid of perhaps any threat from either armed robbers, bandits, etc., like what we are experiencing in this part of the world. So basically, peace is the absence of fear, absence of war, absence of violence, and absence of a kind of threats between individuals or groups or communities or between countries. Then, in all these meanings, there are a lot of meanings of peace, either in the online materials you can find or offline materials. However, according to Ali Ibrahim, he summarized the meaning of peace into 6. 1, peace is the absence of war, just as we stated in some of the definitions of peace we gave. Peace is the absence of direct violence. Peace is the absence of injustice. So if there is justice, there is peace. But if there is injustice, meaning peace will elude that society or community. Then peace is the presence of respect, mutual respect, cordial respect. So if there is mutual respect, cordial respect, mutual trust, peace definitely is existing in that community or society. Then the last but not least is that Peace is the presence of tolerance, just as I stated, well, tolerance, mutual respect, mutual trust. So when there's all this in place, that means there is peace, and people are not afraid to move about, or people are not afraid to interact with each other or to relate with each other. There are types of peace. There are different literatures you can find, or materials, resources, either online or offline, that will give you different angles to what they see as types of peace. However, in all the peace studies you come across, the father of peace studies across the globe is regarded as Johann Galtung. In one of his books in 1996, he divided peace in types of peace into just two. One is negative peace, and the other one is positive peace. According to him, negative peace refers to the absence of violence. When, for example, a ceasefire is enacted, a negative peace will ensue. It is negative because something undesirable stopped happening, e.g., the violence stopped, the oppression ended. For instance, if there is war going on, for instance, and there is a kind of peace agreement or truce for a ceasefire, then that period when there is ceasefire between communities or between countries, it gives room for what he refers to as negative peace, because something was happening before the peace was attained. And perhaps the peace was not permanent because it is ceasefire. Ceasefire in peace language means that the conflicts going on, especially war, will be suspended, maybe perhaps in order to give room for maybe the aids that will be provided by some international organizations, especially donor agencies, to come in, humanitarian activities to be taking place. Just like what was happening in Syria, what is happening in Syria, sometimes the government will block aids to enter some of the regions, especially the regions where the separatists or what the government calls the terrorists are. Then there will be this agreement between the two factions that now there should be a kind of ceasefire for aids materials to be delivered to people, maybe things like water, shelter, food, etc., medication, etc., etc. Then the other type of peace you look at is positive peace. On the other hand, according to him, positive peace is the absence of indirect and structural violence. It is filled with positive contents, such as restoration of relationships, the creation of social systems that serve the needs of the whole population, and the constructive resolution of conflict. In essence, what it means is that this is a kind of lasting peace. If, for instance, there is war going on and there is this agreement, just like it happened in 1945 after the Second World War, when world leaders came together, agree that from thenceforth there will be peace across the world. The UN was formed in order to ensure to continue that body will be responsible for prevention of wars, the resolution of conflicts, and etc. etc. So this, according to John Galtung, is what he refers as positive peace. Then we'll look at some peace codes. There are a lot of quotes you can find in literatures, online or offline materials. However, for the purpose of this presentation, we choose just few. One of these is by Albert Einstein. We know about Albert Einstein is a great philosopher in many fields. According to him, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. What does that mean? That you can't just come and force people that, no, we want peace, you must give us peace. No. You come together on a round table and sit and discuss, dialogue. Then with that, peace will be achieved. And in essence, also, even in your own home, in your relationship with your spouse or with your family members or siblings, you find out that understanding is the key word. When there is mutual understanding, peace will continue to reign in that atmosphere. Then the other one is by Albert Camus. Peace is the only battle worth waging. According to him, a lot of wars are going on. People, individuals and communities are waging wars against each other or countries. But for him, he believes peace is the war that's supposed to continuously be waged. What this means in essence is that people should try as much as possible to promote peace, advocate peace, ensure peace within their communities and between and among other people or societies. Then we have Walt Whiteman. according to him, peace is always beautiful. No doubt about this. Every discerning mind know that peace is beautiful. Peace is what everybody needs, even in your home. Even personally, you need inner peace. You need personal peace, psychologically, emotional, and otherwise. Then we'll have my humble self, after all the research and all my little knowledge, so to say, of things that revolve around peace itself, I come to the conclusion that peace is priceless. You can't buy it. You cannot use the whole of the wealth of this world to buy peace. So, because to quantify how important peace is. So, according to me, peace is priceless and violence is senseless. So, in essence, what I'm saying is that we should always embrace peace in whatever situation we find ourselves. Then, last but not the least, our own great African Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa, he said, if you want to make peace, you don't talk to your friends. You simply talk to your enemies. So what is essence, Desmond Tutu, what is in essence he's trying to say is that in talking to people, in understanding people, in relating with people peacefully, understanding particularly, putting it in as your front burner, it will give you more room for peace, and peace will continue to last in that society. That you don't just go and meet your friends. Your friends, they are your friends already. So making peace with them is like you're already in peace with them. However, he is in essence encouraging you to make peace with your enemies, because you discuss with your enemies, call your enemies, invite them to peace, either as a group or individuals or as a community. Then, why is peace? Well, I'll look at why is peace important in our society. Virtually, there are a lot of reasons that you can find or within yourself that you believe that yes, peace is very important. However, I selected some few points here to discuss. One, peace is very vital to the growth and development of every society. There is no doubt about this. Nobody would doubt the importance of peace in any society, even in your own home, even personally within you. You need peace. Without peace, it may lead you to depression, it may lead you to frustration, it may lead you to crime. So peace is important to human beings, to the society, and the world at large. Then wars and conflicts shatters lives, stunts development. Their effects are far-reaching and passed on to generation as well. For instance, in Israel, the war between Israel and Palestinians have been going on after Arab-Israeli war in toward the end of 1960s and early 1970s. Till date, the Palestinians have been fighting this war of independence, so to say, because they believe the Israelites have come and annexed their land, calling it their land, especially with the development of new territories within their territories being occupied by the Israelis, especially the Israeli government. So you realize that from generation to generation, big conflicts have been going on. So an average Israelite and an average Palestinian see themselves as enemies because this has been passed on from generation to generation. This is one of the effects of war, which ordinarily need not to be so, because if individuals resolve their peace as early as possible, it will stop from snowballing from one generation to the other. Then peace is important because without it, the society becomes uninhabitable. When there is war, definitely everybody look for, sometimes even the child, the woman, look at the love between, it is a popular dictum that the greatest love of all is the love of a mother to the child. But in one situation, you find out sometimes women with their child as young, maybe as 1 year or even a day child, because of the threats, because of fear, sometimes abandon their children and leave the children behind because they are trying to run for their lives. So this is one of the consequences of war. So for that, peace is very important in our society. Preventing peace is good because it shatters societies, it separates people. It makes societies inhabitable. People leave their environments to become IDPs in another environment or become refugees in another country or territory. Then peace fosters the spirit of coexistence. When there is peace, of course, as I said earlier, there will be this peaceful coexistence, there will be tolerance, there will be this understanding, there will be this mutual respect and mutual understanding. Then, last but not least, peace is important for the orderliness in the society. What is conflict? There are, just like peace, conflict itself, there are a lot of definitions you can find around the world, both online and offline resources to show you what conflict is. However, some of the definitions we brought out here include: one, conflicts can generally be defined as disputes between two or more parties, that is people. Conflict usually reflects a clash of interest or goal between parties, which may be individuals or groups of individuals, or ethnic groups or states, that is countries. Conflicts, according to most scholars, occurs when two or more people engage in struggle over values and claims to status, power, and resources, in which the aims of the opponents are to neutralize, injure, or eliminate their rivals. Conflict emerges whenever one party perceives that one or more goals or purpose or means of achieving a goal or preference is being threatened or hindered by the perceive or threat each other as a stumbling block that results in the frustrating the other in attaining a set of goals, or even furthering one's interests through their attitudes, behavior, or actions. This is according to Akuru Aja, 1997. Causes of conflict. Of course, there are a lot of causes of conflict. However, I selected just 9. 1, scramble for scarce resources. Definitely one of the causes of conflict, especially between communities and sometimes even between individuals, is people tend to amass wealth, amass resources. So because of this scramble, sometimes it leads to conflict, maybe between individuals, communities, or countries. We have conflicting styles. People have styles of doing things, styles of have their attitudes, their characters will have different. Sometimes, what basically leads to conflict itself is misunderstanding. Perhaps that is why the white men call it misunderstanding. If you understand people if you understand and tolerate the way people behave, their style, their character, especially if they are not infringing on your rights, perhaps you can relate peacefully and maintain a peaceful relationship. Then conflicting perceptions. Sometimes perception is the greatest undoing to humanity. Within yourself, within your community, your small community, even within your family, between you and your parents, or between you and your siblings, or between you and your neighbors or your friends, you have this perception that, oh, perhaps this person does things this way, or perhaps this person, what he says means this, or what he's doing is acting this way because of this, or because I did not do this, or because he sees me this way. So that perception sometimes creates conflict that unnecessarily you create a kind of conflict, which sometimes may be violent conflicts, especially between countries. So especially with that, this is another topic, because that has to do with international relations. When you come to international relations and diplomacy, it's a very broad perspective on its own. Then conflicting goals. Individuals will have our goals as individuals. As societies will have our goals. For instance, during the Cold War, the Soviet Union was on one side with its allies. The United States was on one side with its allies. The goal of the Soviet Union was to develop a communist society. However, the United States and its ally, the goal was to develop a kind of capitalism, free society, free economy. So because of this, there are these conflicting goals between the two nations. This is whatever happens in conflict. What creates conflict in between people, between communities, either in workplace or at home or in the larger society, between countries, basically are just the same. The causes are almost so. Conflicting goals also causes conflict in societies or between individuals. Then conflicting pressures. Even family pressure sometimes causes people, for instance, if you are being pressured, for instance, if a lady is being pressured to maybe get married when she's not willing or she's not ready, she's not psychologically ready to get married. Perhaps maybe the parent force her into early marriage or forced marriage. Sometimes these are the things that sometimes lead to what sometimes we'll see people, they say, oh, the girl killed her husband, or maybe she left the society and went to somewhere, or a kind of cause some kind of kill either one or both of the parents. But particularly, you find out that one of the spouses will kill the other one because he or she, especially the ladies, that she is not ready for that marriage and her parents force her into it. If she decides to stay there, she may decide to kill the man, or she will just elope and leave the society in general. So then we have conflicting roles. This usually happens in, let's say, in workplace. If, for instance, one of the staff A and member of staff B have roles that you have assigned to them. If the boss, for instance, decide to say, okay, perhaps because this person is doing one thing or the other, let this continue. Perhaps because the other one know that maybe the manager is giving this person his or her own function, he may decide to create, this may create conflict in the workplace. And sometimes this is what may lead to what we call shoulder surfing in the workplace. Maybe you have some strong password you are using in your workplace, for instance, let's say in the banking sector. So one of your colleagues, because he wants to put you in trouble, may do a kind of shoulder surfing and perhaps use your password to a kind of defraud somebody or cause a kind of financial crisis for you, which may lead to a kind of loss to the bank, and the bank will trace that person. And basically, because of these rules, conflicting rules that have been created by unknowingly by the boss or the superior officer that decide to decide to switch functions between two employees. Then different personal values. Definitely, we have different personal values between ourselves as individuals. Then we have injustice and oppression. Sorry, before that, unpredictable policies. Policies, we can see that there are a lot of protests going on in virtually all the continents of the world. Recently, we know what's happened in Nigeria. We know what we call the EndSARS protests. We know the U.S. protests against the brutality of the blacks in America. Recently in France, when the French parliament decided to pass a law that people should not capture either through videos or pictures the injustice being perpetrated by the police. This leads to destruction, violent protests in France, leading to destruction of public properties in France. So sometimes unpredictable policies lead to violence when there is no clear-cut explanation of policies to the people. Sometimes people will protest, and the protest may lead to violence process spreading across the cities and maybe the country. We have injustice and oppression. This is the greatest cause of wars and conflicts across board, either between individuals or so. When there's injustice, just as we said, peace, just as Ibrahim said in one of his points, 6 points of his solid meaning or definition of justice, that the absence of justice is, in essence, itself leads to the absence of peace. If there is injustice, there will be absence of peace. But with justice, peace will prevail in any society. Then oppression, when people are oppressed to the extent they will decide to revolt. So that revolt may lead to a larger revolution that may cause conflict within society. So briefly, let's look at some conflict situations around the world. One, we have the World War I, which was around 1930s to the 1920s to the late 1930s. Then we have the Second World War, which lasted until 1945. We have the Holocaust, which was against the Israelites in particular. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the Arab-Israeli War. As I said earlier, it started around the late 1960s to the 1970s. Then we have the Cold War. Cold War is referred to ideological war. That was the war I was referring to between the America and its allies on one side and the USSR and its ally on the one side. This war ended around the 1990s, leading to the Balkanization of the USSR. What that entails is that the Cold War, basically there was no any physical attack or physical confrontation between the USA and its ally on one side and USSR on its allies on one side. What happened was there was this ideological war, and it has its consequences because some countries were divided. Some were aligned to US, some countries were aligned to the USSR. So if, for instance, you are especially the developing countries, you are looking for a loan facility in the IMF or World Bank because they are tilted towards the United States, you may not get the loan because you are aligned to USSR. Then the USSR was, as I said earlier, promoting communism, while USA and its allies were promoting capitalism and free economy. Then we have the Gulf War. We have the Iraqi War, many of the Arab war in the Middle East. There was this war that, and then even that within that period, there was this America invasion of Iraq. There was this Iraqi-Iran war. Then we have the Israeli-Palestinian war, as I said, is still ongoing. As of today, we have Hamas, we have Hezbollah, all this in the part of the Palestinians, and we have the Israeli government on the other side. This war has been raging on since the Arab-Israeli war in the 1970s. Then we have African wars and struggle for independence. Africans were struggling for independence in the 1950s towards the 1960s. Then on those times, sometimes it has to be confrontational, especially in the Francophone-speaking countries of West Africa in particular. Some of these countries kind of experience serious devastation from the French government. Even in the Middle East, countries like Morocco, countries like Tunisia, countries like Egypt, there was this confrontation between it and its colonial master, France. Then we have another war is that the Nigerian Civil War, which started from 1967 and ended in 1970. That war devastated a lot of properties, a lot of people were killed, and that war till date has created a kind of mistrust between the Nigerian government and the Southeastern government dominated by our Igbo brothers, and because of the effects of that war. Then we have the Liberian Civil War. The African countries, especially the West African countries led by Nigeria, has to provide a kind of peacekeeping operation in Liberia, bring contributed troops, that's soldiers, military, then go to Liberia, keep peace there, leading to even during the time of former president, His Excellency, former Nigerian president, His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, he has to bring Charles Taylor, the former warlord, who will become president, bring him to Nigeria, then give room for peace to reign in Liberia. Then we'll have the Rwandan Civil War, popularly called the genocide. There has never been genocide across the world that has been so devastating, especially in the African country like the Rwandan Civil War. The Civil War, the Houthis were basically targeting the Tutsis and killing them virtually. There were a lot of deaths in Rwanda. Then we have the Arab Spring. Of course, the Arab Spring began in Tunisia. A trader, a petty trader called Muhammad Bouazizi. He felt that taxation was frustrating him. The tax government was frustrating. So there was this tax enforcement team that was frustrating just little traders. So he was so frustrated that he just looked for a fuel, poured on himself, then ignited fire on himself, and that led to his death. Before you know it, there was this protest, and that protest led to violent protests in many Arab countries, especially in the Middle East. Well, that is what was called the Arab Spring. So this led to regime change in several African countries, including Tunisia, Egypt, etc., etc. Then we have the Syrian Civil War, which is still ongoing, which is devastation. And one of the causes, or one of the reasons why some of these wars don't end in time is that some countries try to support materially and financially to some of these countries or the rebels. As we speak, the Syrian government is being supported by the Russian government, whereas the US is supporting what they call, according to them, freedom fighters, but the Syrian government called those terrorists. So that war has been lasting for more than 10 years, and although it started as part of the Arab Spring, which snowballed to especially most African countries. Then we have the Libyan Civil War, of course, is still ongoing. After the toppling of Muammar Gaddafi, the long-term leader which some people referred as dictator. It was a government that was appreciated by people before then. However, when the US and government decided, okay, Gaddafi has to go, it's okay, he want to contest it, that Libya has to transit to democracy. He agreed that he transit, but he contest. They said, the US and Italy said, no, you won't contest. Okay, you won't contest again, but still, before you know it, they said, no, he must be captured and killed. And he was killed. And before you know it, there was this faction in Libya. And as we speak, there's one faction by the UN recognized government, and there's the other faction led by Haftar. Haftar, as we speak, there is Turkey on the other side supporting the UN government. UN supported government. Then there is Haftar being supported by Russia and other allies, including sending mercenaries to Libya. And as we speak, the war is still ongoing. They will sign truce, sign peace accord, sign ceasefire. Before you know it, it will be violated by one of the sections, especially the General Haftar. Then we have Saudi-led coalition against the Houthis in Yemen. That coalition is still causing havoc as we speak today in Yemen. Then we have the violence regime changes in Africa, as I stated earlier. Some of them have been orchestrated indirectly by colonial masters, especially France. If you go against their policies, before you know it, they will just look for some boys in the military to just stage a coup. And these coups, there were coups and counter coups. Then struggle for secession in Africa. There are a lot of struggle for secession in different places. We have the South Sudan versus Sudan, which led to the independence of South Sudan. I hope most of you here will know that South Sudan is the newest member of the UN, is the latest country that gone independent. So then we have Western Sahara versus Morocco. Recently, just last week, just yesterday, the Morocco embassy to US was saying that the United States, because it's an ally of the Morocco, has redesigned the map of Morocco to include the Southern Sahara. Southern Sahara, which is led by the Sahrawi people, they have been struggling to get their own independence. As we speak, some countries, they have embassies in some countries. However, some countries did not recognize them. So, but the struggle for independence has been on till date. Then we have Biafra versus Nigeria. In our own experience, Biafra, after the end of the Civil War in 1970, although there was this policy of reconstruction, rehabilitation, and reconciliation, 3 R's by the former Nigerian head of state, General Yakubu government. However, as I said earlier, there was this mutual trust between the Southeast, our Igbo brothers, and the government and the Northerners, in particular to date. So one young guy, although the warlord himself, the great Chief Ojukwu, Odumegwu Ojukwu, the leader of the Biafran then, he said he regretted participating in that war, and that even given the opportunity, he will not allow that because of the devastation the war has caused. He will not lead his people into another civil war. But a young man called Nnamdi Kalu came and associated Biafra, and as we speak, they are still, although the government has designated Biafra as a terrorist group, he is still operating within Nigeria. Then we have Northern Cameroon versus Southern Cameroon. As we speak, the Northern Cameroon is dominated by English-speaking people, but the other part of Cameroon, the Southern Cameroon, which is under the government of His Excellency President Paul Biya. He said this struggle has been on to see how that the Northern Cameroon that are be agitating for independence, but the conflict is still ongoing. Then, of course, recently we have Tigray region with its headquarters in Mekelle versus Ethiopian government, which recently the Prime Minister Ahmed led military to enter into the region, and according to him, later the government said they have captured some of the leaders of the Tigray region, and they also arrested some of them, or either killed or arrested some of them. The conflict, as we speak, is also going. Then there are a lot of conflicts around the world. We have inter-community conflicts, we have inter-ethnic conflicts, we have inter-religious conflicts, we have terrorism, we have ISIS, we have ISIS around, especially around the Middle East. We have the Taliban in Afghanistan. We have Islamic states of West Africa in West African region. We have Nigeria. We have our own experience. the so-called Boko Haram. They are still causing havoc in northern Nigeria, and especially in the Borno axis of Nigeria. So terrorism is another conflict situation that is ravaging the world. Then we have violent protests in many parts of the world. As I said earlier, the recent one being the one in France against police brutality. Then we have consequences of conflict. There are a lot of consequences of conflict. However, some of the points I enumerated here include: one, conflict creates consistent hatred and bitterness among rival groups, group of people, ethnic groups, or communities. As I said earlier, example of Palestinian and Israel, there are these mutual mistrust between Nigerian government or the northern Nigerian, for this particular, and the Biafran people in one side. This hatred has been going on for ages. Then we have conflict creates room for discrimination among parties or people. Sometimes, as a consequence of conflict, there will be this discrimination among people. Just like the Biafran, we are agitating that some of the army that served in the Biafran army were not a kind of absorbed into the Nigerian army, or some of them that retired were not paid their entitlement. However, the president of, His Excellency, the government of His Excellency President Muhammad Buhari gave them all their entitlement recently. I think that was around 2018 or 2017. Then we have conflict leads to destruction of properties, injuries, death, especially of the vulnerable members of the society. This is no longer news. This is something that everybody will know, that conflict usually leads to destruction of properties, injuries, and perhaps the death. Many people will die in the course of conflicts, especially between communities or between countries. Then we have conflict leads to the displacement of people from their primary homes. That's leading to IDPs. In Nigeria, we have a lot of IDP camps. Even in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria, we have about 3 IDP camps in Abuja. We have 1 IDP camp in Edo State. We have numerous IDP camps in Gombe, in Borno, in Adamawa, in Yobe State, etc., etc. Then conflict leads to increase in criminal activities in the society. A very good example is Libya. Libya has now become a kind of, let me say, failed state, because people now kidnap people and keep them and ask for ransom, just as is happening in some part of Nigeria, especially northwest Nigeria, states like Katsina, Zamfara, and the rest. Libya, as I was saying, has led become a kind of failed state, because people will kidnap people, and you find out that they will just create their own camp, their own prisons, their own cells, so to say, and keep people there, because a lot of arms have been proliferated. There is proliferation of arms. So virtually everybody now has gun in his hands. So people are going into different kinds of crime, kidnapping, etc., etc. So as we are experiencing in the northwestern part of Nigeria recently. Then conflict is a great obstacle to societal progress, economic prosperity, political stability, and overall socio-economic development of any society because of its destructive impact. This, of course, is also not new. Conflict destroys property, destroys individuals, destroys lives, and destroys the peaceful coexistence of society. Then, how can we resolve conflict? How to resolve conflict? There are a lot of recommendations by different scholars, different advocates of peace, and different governments and different non-governmental organizations or international bodies like the UN. However, pick some very few. Conflict resolution is a way for 2 or more, conflict resolution is a way for 2 or more parties to find a peaceful resolution of common ground to disagreement among them. Disagreement may be personal, political, financial, emotional, etc., etc. The following steps are to be followed in successful negotiating the resolution of a conflict, either within family level, community level, or at international level. The first step is understanding the conflict itself. What led to the conflict itself? What is the trend of the conflict? How does the conflict, conflicting parties, what are their roles? Who are the major actors in the conflict? You understand the major roles, then you put this as part of the steps you need to take in order to resolve that conflict. Then the second thing is to communicate with the opposition. the opposing sides are supposed to be brought together by any discerning stakeholder that decide to a kind of peacemaker or peace negotiator. We bring the opposing side together, just like what is happening between the Taliban and the Afghanistan government, that recently they are trying to sign peace pact led by one woman, I've forgotten her name, and the US government on the other side, led by the US Secretary of State. Then brainstorm possible solutions. There are a lot of solutions to any conflicting situation. So it is very pertinent for discussion. The discussion, there should be mutual respect in the discussion. There should not be a kind of use of foul languages in the discussion. So then choose the best resolution. Out of the conflict resolution steps, choose the best that will best suit the situation at hand. Then use a third-party mediator. Of course, just as I give example with what is happening between the government of Afghanistan on one side and Taliban on one side, and the US government and the Afghan woman that was trying to see how the conflict in Afghanistan will be resolved. Use a third party. Basically, it will be difficult for two opposing parties or two conflicting parties to come together and say, okay, no, let us just come together and start making peace. Definitely, the process is accelerated and have more solid impact if there is a mediator who must be fair and objective in his mediation effort. Then we have explore alternatives. If you use one of the alternatives of achieving, say maybe you propose a recommendation on how to attain that peace, and perhaps one or two of the opponents or parties decide that no, they don't buy that idea, or they think maybe they will get cheated or they will be on the losing side. Try to see how you explore other alternatives that will lead to a kind of win-win situation. Then we have cope with the stressful situation and pressure tactics. Of course, in conflict resolution, if you bring two parties together, each party is trying to see that it wins more advantage to its side. So it's now left for the mediator or mediators to try to see how they will balance the situation so that each party feels a kind of taken along, feels confidence that yes, he or she or the group is not cheated in the process. Then let's briefly look at what negotiation is. Negotiation is a method by which people settle conflicts / differences. It is a process by which compromise or agreement is reached while avoiding arguments and further disputes. When a dispute arises, often the best course of action is negotiation to resolve the disagreement. In any dispute or conflict, individuals understandably aim to achieve the best possible outcome for their position or the society they represent. However, the principles of fairness, seeking mutual benefit, and maintaining a relationship are the keys to a successful outcome. Just as I stated earlier, trying to balance the situation in order to get a successful outcome in the negotiation process. Then, types of negotiation. We have what is called the distributive negotiation. We have the integrative negotiation. We have the productive negotiation. We have the text-based negotiation. There are a lot of negotiations types you can get online or offline in different types of materials that are abound. However, in selecting the types of negotiation that will suit a specific situation, as I stated earlier in the last point, you look at the possible solution that will suit the situation on ground. Then when you get the possible solution, you now look at how to utilize it for the benefit of the two parties so that there will be a kind of balance. Nobody will feel cheated. The distributive negotiation. Distributive negotiation is also sometimes called personal or hard bargaining negotiation, an attempt to distribute a fixed pie, for example, of benefits. Distributive negotiations operates under zero-sum conditions and implies that any gain one party makes is at the expense of the other and vice versa. For this reason, distributive negotiation is also sometimes called win-lose. That means because what led to the conflict is perhaps a kind of trying to a situation that is creating a sort of injustice or trying to scramble for resources that belong to somebody else. So definitely in order to achieve peace, if reasons are given by both parties and you realize that definitely this party, this property, for instance, belongs to this party, or the larger part of this property belongs to this other party, try to explain to the other party that, please, for the sake of peace and for the sake of justice, this, to the best of my knowledge, or to the best of our knowledge, we the negotiators, is that this property or the larger part of this property, for example, a piece of land between two communities, belong to so community or so individual. So that is in essence what distributive negotiation entails. Then we have what we call the integrative negotiation. Integrative negotiation is also called interest-based or merit-based or principle negotiation. It is a set of techniques that attempts to improve the quality and likelihood of negotiated agreement by taking advantage of the fact that different parties often value various outcomes differently. Usually, integrative negotiation attempts to create value in the course of the negotiation, expand the pie. For instance, if there is a land dispute, which I use example in the distributive negotiation, and perhaps there is a border dividing three communities, whereas these two communities are the ones struggling for this, or perhaps let's take for instance a piece of land, three neighbors. The other two neighbors are struggling to say, oh, mine is larger or mine is larger. You as the negotiator, if for instance you are the third party, perhaps your plot is the next plot to either party A or party B, you may decide to, as a way of getting peace, ensuring that peace reigns between the two of them. That's okay part. You take the other part, then why not you, that is my neighbor? I'll give you part of mine so that peace will reign between the two of you. So basically it's what integrative negotiation. Then we have productive negotiation. The productive negotiation focuses on the underlying interests of the parties rather than their stating positions. Approach is negotiation as a shared problem solving rather than a personalized battle, and insists upon adherence to objective principle criteria as the basis for agreement. So in this, you insist that the right thing must be done as a negotiator or as a peacemaker. That no matter what, this person that insists that, oh, he has part of this, let's say part of this loaf belongs to him, or part of this piece of land that he wants to grab this land, insist based on the evidence at your before you the negotiators, that this property belongs to party A and he must take the whole of the property because it belongs to him. With this, you are insisting and saying that yes, definitely this is the most just way of achieving peace in negotiation. Then we have the text-based negotiation. What text-based negotiation says in essence is that in any type of negotiation, for it to last, for it to endure, for there to be sustainable peace, there should be a kind of written agreement between the two parties. All the agreements should be written. There should be signature or a kind of a stamped signature that, if possible, bring in lawyers to sign for each party. There should be witnesses so that in future there is a document that is shared between party A and party B. Then with the negotiators or the peacemakers, then everybody should have the copy in case one of the parties decide to kind of maybe come up next time and say, no, what happened was not what was negotiated or was agreed at the negotiation table. So text-based negotiation refers to the process of working up a text of an agreement which all parties are willing to accept and sign up to. Negotiating parties may begin with a draft text, consider new textual suggestions, and work to find the middle ground among various differing positions. Then we have the goals of negotiation. In negotiation, some of the goals of negotiation as highlighted here are: 1, to produce a solution that all parties can agree to; 2, to improve, not to hurt, the relationship between the individuals or groups in conflict; 3, to work as quickly as possible to find this solution; 4, to broker peace between the parties involved in a conflict; 5, to create room for the prevention of similar conflicts in the future; Then 6, to ensure that an agreement that is enduring and mutually accepted by all parties in the conflict is reached and peace is resolved, particularly by signing documents that are involved. Stages of negotiation. There are a lot of stages. However, we have the process of negotiations include the following steps. We have what we call the preparation stage, discussion stage, clarification of goals, negotiate towards win-win outcome, then agreement, then implementation of course of action. Basically, in negotiation, those actors that decide to come as stakeholders or as interested parties to resolve the conflict between individuals or communities. First of all, you prepare your mind, prepare the individuals, call each party, if possible, if it's through phone or through email, or perhaps you go to their various communities, if it involves communities. It discloses that, okay, we are trying to make peace between the two of you. We decide, okay, part of the preparation, okay, you decide the date, the venue, and the best way is to get a neutral ground. If it's between individuals, perhaps it would be good if you can make the peace to happen in your own house as a peacemaker. And if it's between communities, maybe if you are in part one of the community, you guys should go to another community to negotiate the peace. Just like the Afghanistan, I gave an example a few minutes ago. The peace effort being made to resolve the conflict between Afghan government and the Taliban is taking place in Qatar. So just to ensure that it's a neutral ground, everybody has the right to speak his or her mind, and each party will present their own point of their own part of the point of argument for the understanding of all, and especially the negotiator. Then discussion. In the negotiation process, there's the stage of discussion. You state your own points, and the other party state their own points. That's another part of another step, a stage in negotiation process. Then we'll have clarification of goals. Okay, in this, as you discuss, it's expected as, okay, this is what I want, or these are my prayers, or these are my target, or this is what we want to get out of this negotiation as conflicting party. We want this land, or want this issue resolved this way, perhaps usually in our own favor. Then we have negotiate towards win-win outcome. As I stated earlier, the best form of negotiation is to ensure that each party feel belong. Each party, no party feel that he or she or the organization or community he or she is representing is cheated. So there should be a sort of balance that is win-win. You take half of part of the agreement and you get half of the pie, for example. Then agreement. In this stage, agreements are reached. Okay, we'll do it this way. Agreed by party A, agreed by party B, which may be community or individuals. Then this agreement should be signed. After signing the agreement, then there should be a kind of implementation strategy or steps that will be taken. Everybody says, okay, from so, for example, if it's between communities, okay, from so date to so date, for example, if it's a piece of land, that piece of land will be taken from party A to B, or from so date to date, it will be taken to party A. So, as we conclude, basically, there are a lot of means and ways you can carry out your advocacy as a peace and ethics advocate in your community or at the larger society. However, for the sake of this workshop, I have enumerated some of the steps you can take in order to ensure that your advocacy is carried out successfully, or you make peace between individuals and communities. 1, carefully study or observe crisis or conflict situations before you attempt resolving them. 2, think of possible, attainable, sustainable, and sustainable means of conflict resolution that can be used to resolve the conflict. Think of case-related and suitable solutions, methods, or approaches to adopt. As I said earlier, there are a lot of differences of how to attain peace and how to resolve conflict between people. So in doing that, ensure that you try as much as possible to make sure that there is a kind of win-win situation between the two conflicting parties. Another point is that follow conflict resolution steps suggested in this training material, and engage on further online and offline research on existing and emerging works on peace and ethics, and use your discretion in the process of resolving conflicts or carrying out your advocacy. So basically, whatever you are doing, use your discretion think of what is possible, what will give you possible results as you carry on your advocacy as peace and ethics advocates in your society or the larger community. Another point is that start from yourself, your personal self. Attain inner peace by resolving conflicting cultural, socio-economic, emotional, and psychological challenges you might be facing. Try as much as possible resolving all conflicts you may have with any individual or group of people around you. That will help. Then another point is I should try as much as possible to resolve as many as possible conflicts between and among your kids and kin, your friends and relations. If there is conflict between them, as peace and ethics advocates, try as much as possible to see how you can resolve them. With that step, you'll be gaining more knowledge, you'll be gaining more experience and more exposure as you carry on with your advocacy, peace and ethics advocacy. Then, in consultation with other members of your community, especially your immediate community, make efforts to broker peace between people and among groups or communities. If, for instance, by an injury, you have friends or maybe neighbors who are having this issue, no matter how little that issue is, so long as it's a conflict. As I said earlier, conflict must not be confrontational. Sometimes there are these grudges between people that sometimes they will keep malice within themselves. Try and see how you solve this, even if it's either in school, in workplace, at home, or whatever. Try to see how you solve it, especially among your kids and kin. Then, if possible, take courses on peace and or conflict resolution. There are a lot of these, some of them offline, online. You can take courses. Some of them are even free. You can take online courses on peace and conflict and how to resolve conflicts between individuals or community. That will also help you in your advocacy. Form small peace and conflict resolution groups or clubs where you will, as a group, discuss perceived or real conflict situations in your immediate community and proffer possible, plausible solutions and implement those solutions to the best of your abilities. Just form one small group, whether group of 5, group of 10, if possible, group of 3. Just have that as a kind of a club, a kind of a group. Just you can give it any name, or you can just decide, okay, this is our group, this is what we have intended to do in this our community. If there's any conflict between people, either between husband and wife, just try as much as possible to see how you can resolve them between siblings, between communities, or between people around you. Try to see how you can do your best to see how you can resolve those conflicts. It will help you in your advocacy work. Then take your peace and ethics advocacy to schools, marketplaces, CBOs. CBOs stands for community-based organizations. There are a lot. Hardly will you find a community where there are no organizations, maybe like town, community, maybe like age grades, or maybe they say so community. Let's say Bagi Community Development Association, Igala Community, Igbo Community Development Association, etc., etc. Take your advocacy to them. See how you can resolve conflict, or see how you can go and speak to them about peace, the importance of peace, and why they should embrace peace always. Then take your advocacy also to FBOs, faith-based organizations. That is FBOs, Christian religion, Islamic religion. If possible, if you are a Christian, for instance, you can start to see how you can create an opportunity in your church or in your group in church. See how you can take the message of peace to them. That also will also help in broadening your knowledge and experience as you carry on with your peace and ethics advocacy. Then YBOs, women-based organizations. Women, of course, virtually in every society, women are in the larger percentage. So if women make peace, the peace usually lasts more, even within smaller communities. If women make effort, just as I stated earlier, the woman, I've forgotten her name, the woman that is trying to broker peace between Afghan government and the Taliban group, which is happening in Qatar. She's a woman, and all efforts that have been made before, even with the US, trying to see how it will broker peace between them, so that as US prepares to withdraw its troops under the leadership of His Excellency President Donald Trump, all efforts made to negotiate and to broker peace, to make peace with the Taliban has failed. But due to the efforts of this very woman, a lot is being achieved, and it is believed that very soon peace will be attained between the Taliban and the Afghan government. Then YBOs, youth-based organizations. In any society, youth are the engine, youth are the most vibrant segment of the society. So if you have any youth organization you belong to, or no matter how the youth organization are, try to see how you can take your peace and advocacy to them, promote peace within them, tell them the importance of peace, and tell them how they can attain peace whenever there is any conflict between them or between the communities in which they are. Then we'll have take your advocacy to community and religious leaders in your locality. Yes, you can speak to your pastor, you can speak to imam, you can speak to, if you are a traditionalist, you can speak to the person that leads you in your shrine. Speak to them on how to see that they will pass the message of peace to the larger congregation. It will also help you. It will also broaden your perspective, and you get to understand as you speak with them, discuss with them. Perhaps you can get their opinion and how you think peace can be attained, not only within that community, within that group, or within that religious group, but within the larger society, larger community, and the whole world in particular. So by the time you get engaged, you engage them, perhaps that will also broaden your perspective and make your work easy as you carry on your peace and ethics advocacy. Then create and use your own ideas, which you believe can help you get the required results. You're a human being. You have your exposure, you have your experience, either as at family level or at the community level, or what you read either online or offline or papers. There are a lot of things you have read and you understand about what peace entails, the importance of peace, why peace should prevail in societies. So create your own ideas and use your own discretion. I believe certainly that this will help you to a very large extent in carrying out your peace and ethics advocacy. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Times for questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Zakari Gimba Hassan. Thank you very much for that very elaborate presentation, very useful, very detailed, and thank you very much for opening our eyes to many things as well, since we're all learning every day. Very excellent presentation. I would also add, that whatever it is, just remember that Ambassador Zakari Gimba Hassan, you can always ask him in events whereby you encounter complexities, complex situations, that are that involve conflict, and you're trying to resolve this conflict. You can always refer to him for guidance, because he's an expert in this field. And additionally, every activity that you engage yourself in within your community, it will be very, very good, and it will be a requirement that you document each and everything that you actually become engaged in. And when you do this, you would send this to us, obviously, and then we will publish this, on our website, and this will enable us to nominate you for our yearly awards. So you can can be you can win a Peace Prize award. You can win several kinds of awards anyway, depending on the SDGs, whether it's violence, whether it's peace and conflict resolution, whether it's somebody's mic is interfering. Okay, so yes, it's important that you actually document your activities. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, and I'll allow you guys to ask questions and finish the workshop with Ambassador Zakari Gimba Hassan, and I'll take my leave from here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I have a question. I have a question.
Ambassador, she's trying to ask a question. Can you unmute your mic, please? Because she can't hear you. Can you unmute your mic?
Oh, gosh.
Okay, yes. Yes, go ahead, please.
Sir, you talked about the Millennium Development Goals. You said they are United Nations Millennium Goals. I don't quite understand that part.
You said Millennium Development Goals.
The Millennium Development Goals. I don't understand it.
Uh, you don't understand it. I don't. What part did you? Don't you understand, please?
When you meant in brief, when you wrote it in
Okay.
brief, I don't understand.
Can I take that? Let
Okay.
me take that. Let me take that,
Okay.
Ambassador, if you don't mind.
Okay.
The
Okay. Okay. Your
the
Excellency.
MDGs are the past, okay, Teslima? The
Yes.
MDGs are in the past. We are These are goals, that actually were built upon, in the millennium. Now we are not focusing on the MDGs because the MDGs have failed in some certain ways. So the SDG is a better version of the MDGs. The SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals. So they are a build up of the MDGs. When the MDGs came into existence, you were probably very, very young, so you might not really have come across it. But now what we're concentrating upon is the SDGs. Okay? So
Okay,
don't worry
thank you.
yourself. Don't worry yourself about the MDGs for now.
Okay, ma. Thank you,
But,
ma.
yes, thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for that explanation. Just to add a little, we brought I decided to bring the MDGs to explain the 8 points, basically briefly, to a kind of stand as a foundation, because it was the MDGs that gave birth to SDGs. Just as Her Excellency, the chairperson, said, the most countries did not meet up with the Millennium Development Goals. The target was to meet Millennium Development Goals by 2015. However, due to some challenges, especially in developing countries like in Africa and Latin America, the MDGs were kind of replaced with the SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you. Any question, please, from any other person?
Yes, please, I would like to ask a question.
Okay.
Okay, you talked about types of peace.
Yes.
I would like to I want you to explain more about the negative peace, because I believe that positive peace means when a good thing comes out of conflict. You understand? But I don't understand that negative aspect of it. Can you explain more about it, please?
Yes. According to Johann Galtung, as I stated earlier, negative peace, according to him, why he calls it negative is that something bad was happening before the peace is attained. And basically, the peace is halfway. And that is why he used the example of ceasefire. I hope you know what ceasefire is. Ceasefire is a situation whereby
Yes,
there are
yes.
wars between two countries or two communities, and due to one reason or the other, especially creating room or avenue for aids that have been made by kind of baskets of donor individuals and organizations, aids that are brought together. The aids could include medicals, could include food, it could include shelter, especially, clothing and shelter. So sometimes some countries will decide that they don't want medical aid, aid materials to reach other the parts or other parties. For example, just of recent, the latest one was the war between, or let me say, the conflict between the government of uh, Ethiopia and the Tigris region, which carved Mekele at its headquarters in Ethiopia. The government said, sent soldiers to go and kind of bombard that area. which led to conflict. Of course, most people left their country. They become IDPs in neighboring Sudan. Most Ethiopians are now in Sudan due to the conflict. So, in essence, the government denied aid materials to be taken to Makele. So, this in itself is a kind of a situation whereby the government is trying to use that as a means of defeating the separatists in Makele or around the Tigray region. So in essence, why Galton said this negative, this is negative because something was happening before it was attained, and it is not a kind of complete peace. It was a kind of ad hoc. Let me use that word, ad hoc. So you decided, just like what happened between Libyan government and Libyan UN recognized Libyan government and the Khalifa Haftar, General Khalifa Haftar, who is another part of Libya, fighting the government, trying to say his own government should be recognized. There was this time that a truce was reached, that ceasefire was reached. However, Haftar and his men violated that peace after. So you can see that is why it is negative, because anything can happen at any time. Any group can violate that peace pact, that ceasefire. So that is why Galton call it negative. However, positive is that peace has been existing, and there's no any way that any conflict has emerged, or after the conflict has emerged, efforts were made by the mediators and lasting peace was achieved. That is what we call positive peace. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question, please, ladies and gentlemen? If there are no further questions, let me conclude. The most potent means of achieving real and enduring peace is through constructive and selfless engagements, discussions, and dialogue by all parties involved in a conflict, bearing in mind and utilizing the letters and spirits of give and take through compromises and concessions, in addition to sincere, fair, and just intervention by stakeholders, that is peacemakers. So this is basically how to attain peace in any situation. So if you can bear this in mind, it will help in attaining peace in all societies. So I want to most sincerely thank the chairperson, Her Excellency, the chairperson of Abdi, Her Excellency, Ms. Farida Ali Adamu. And I want to thank you all the peace ethics advocates for your time. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your commendations. Thank you for your questions. And thank you for attention. I thank you most sincerely for your attention. So this will be the end of the presentation. Thank you. So good night, ladies and gentlemen. Bye-bye, everybody.